I guess I'm going to be walking on eggshells when it comes to discussing the topic of this video. Not because of what I'm about to say is controversial per se, but I don't want this to come off in a poor way of waving the finger at parents in particular who could be watching and then thinking that I know better than them. This is just a topic I have contemplated on for a long time, and I figured this might be helpful for those who want a few tips with how to raise your children in a way how they can appreciate good art, while keeping them safe from all the garbage out there that is infecting the young minds nowadays. And if you already found a system that works great for you and your family, that's terrific. Don't let me get in the way. But if you are a younger parent like myself and are still trying to figure out how to manage your kids' screen time, that is if they should have any at all, or how to know the quality of the content they are consuming is any good, then you might want to stick around because this might help you. That being said, with that soft disclaimer out of the way, let's get started with the conversation of how your kids should be watching media. Step 1. Turn on VeggieTales and call it a day. No, I'm just kidding. At least half kidding. But in all seriousness, guiding your kid through the realm in modern media can be a huge challenge given the fact that we are so oversaturated and stimulated with so much content in the modern era. This was nowhere near as big of a discussion not even 20 years ago, given the fact that technology has changed quite a lot. And it was also nowhere near as quantitative as it is now. That's a lot of pressure for any parent to deal with. So let's talk about the big elephant in the room that kind of needs to be addressed if we're going to talk about how to guard or judge properly of what your kids are watching. And that elephant is called the dreaded S word: screen time. Now, I don't know about you, but I kinda hate this term for one of many reasons. First reason is that the term screen time sort of has the implication that any kind of screen time of which the child is consuming is just a time killer or just a way to shut kids up for a couple of hours so mom and dad can get a break. But it obviously affects the child's mind very harshly with drastically lowering the attention span and also giving them the wrong distorted view of what the positive impact of movies can give. If a kid is raised to think that the TV is just a pastime event, then he or she will have this mindset that when they are older, they just shrug off the storytelling overall, since it's too slow for them. There's not enough flashing lights. This is what nurtures the mentality of doom scrolling because it's just flashes of stimulation. You will never remember what you just saw. Everything you feel is just your endorphin sensors getting overloaded with no substance. It can become a full-on drug. And just as a general statement, I hope that there can be some unanimous agreement that your kid should not be glued to an iPad or smartphone 6 hours a day. And neither should you, but that's besides the point. Instead, seeing screens as a glowing, pixelated endorphin rush, I encourage everyone of all ages to switch their perspective of screens into a mindset of looking at an art gallery. But not just on a visual standpoint, since obviously from the tip of the iceberg I know that the main commonality between the two mediums is just visual aesthetics. Here's the Mona Lisa, painted by Da Vinci with oil paints, and here's one of the coolest animated shots from Into the Spider-Verse, created by Sony animators. Both visual, I know, but what I encourage viewers of all ages to do is when they look at something from a basic outside view like this example, I want people to analyze the deeper meaning behind what they see in front of them. In the case of the Mona Lisa, try to depict the feeling that Da Vinci is trying to communicate to you through his brush strokes, through the washed out tones of dry colors, through the subtle expressions of the Mona Lisa herself. What do you pull from that? What is the message that the creator is trying to give to you through the art? Those ideas that I just presented is what I want viewers who watch movies or shows to pull out. Because once we start treating kid shows or even just TV as a whole just something as a distraction to strangle our kids' minds for a few hours, without even caring what they are watching in the first place, then we not only failed at showing what real true art means, we also failed as leaders in their lives to be an influence. The screen has now become the influence. But then there is the flip side of the conversation, where we need to analyze the quality of the programs we are watching. And being a Christian YouTuber who holds absolute truth as a rock to stand on, this reasoning I have might be a shock to all of you of how simple my guidelines actually are. And that statement I have is simply watch something that reflects Christ or truth. But what does that mean exactly? Does that mean you should watch The Chosen 24/7 and nothing else? And I hope you will all agree with me when I say that is not necessary. But what I do say is watch stories that reflect biblical truth. And believe it or not, a lot of Hollywood movies are full, or at least used to be full, of this kind of writing. This point I'm making kind of leans towards what I was saying in my Hollywood movies are more Christian than you think video. Because all writers of famous scripts that we are familiar with have truth written on their hearts, whether they acknowledge that's from God or not. The point is, we as people know what is objectively right and wrong. And good writers who can use that yearning for goodness and truth can turn that into incredible works of art, which soon create archetypal story templates that we as a modern audience are familiar with, like such as the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the downfall of a villain and then redeemed story arc, or even just your classic good versus evil stories, or even the rise of the anti-hero, like in Breaking Bad, learning from the mistakes of the protagonist or antagonist you see in front of you. All these templates are straight from the Bible, and you can enjoy them just as much whether or not you're a Christian. Oh, but there's blood on screen! This is straight from the secular world of media! Okay, hold your horses. Just because Mr. Clean is not on screen to watch every drop of red liquid you see doesn't mean you should turn the whole thing off and walk away. Don't get me wrong, there is definitely a conversation to have about how much violence is too much for you or your kids. But that is definitely more of a conversation to have in your own time, with your kids, what you think is right. This is much more of a subjective argument in my book. But if you want my take, I think violence is needed when it's appropriate. And my go-to example for this will always be Passion of the Christ. Mel Gibson, who directed the movie, was going for the angle of full-on realism of what it looked like when Jesus experienced the physical brutality of crucifixion. And I think the movie is so much more powerful when you see the visual glimpse of what Jesus went through. And that was just the physical part, not to mention carrying the sin of the world. And I think the movie was absolute perfection for how gritty and visceral it was. It made the viewer really question who this Jesus guy really was, and is he worth following? And I think that's the greatest accomplishment that a movie can make you feel and think about. Now, I'm not saying to stick your kids in front of the Passion of the Christ and tell little 5-year-old Jimmy to not cover his eyes and see how raw the violence is because it's good for him to see. We have a rating system for a reason, even if they're not so accurate anymore. But the point is that kids' minds are so fragile and are like soft sponges. They will just soak up and absorb everything you give them. And if you abuse that innocence, then you could easily scar them for life and traumatize them, which is obviously not good. That's how powerful visual storytelling can be. This goes for many other areas in media, not just violence. This exact reasoning applies to scary movies and scary scenes that kids watch. They will soak in everything they see, and those characters that are portrayed on film are actually not good characters to follow or be affected by. Like, y'all know how much I love Daredevil or The Walking Dead, and how incredible those stories really are. But I'm not going to let my young kid watch that thinking he's going to take away the same mature themes I take away from. If you spoil that innocence of your children, regardless if you are intentionally aware of what they are watching, it's going to still harm them. Think of it like going to the gym. You've been a regular member there for quite some time, and you have grown muscle and strength over the numerous years of working out there. Then you decide it's time to bring 10-year-old Jimmy with you and let him experience the great health and atmosphere the gym has to offer. So you stick him on the bench press and give him 300 pounds to start off with. Guess what's going to happen? Yeah, he's going to be very injured, if not dead from that. What he obviously should start with is just light weights or bodyweight workouts to get himself to that high level one day. And the exact same rules apply to storytelling and the intensity of movies overall. And if you're wondering what that looks like practically of what to show your kids on that point, well, that's up to your judgment and for you to analyze your kid knowing what's best given your thought of discernment. But that's just covering how to approach screen time and intensity of the media you're taking in. What other mature subjects? Like bad language, sexual content? And this is going to be much more of a simple answer for me to give. Let's talk about sexual content first of all. There's absolutely no point at all to showcase this kind of stuff, especially if it's depicted in a lustful way for the story. There just isn't. The reason why popular movies nowadays have some hinting of this or just revealing it flat out in your face is to get you enticed to watch more or trigger lustful desires overall. This is not only objectively evil and twisted, but it also slowly perverts your mind of understanding all of it. It's straight up black and white when it comes to this topic. There is no reason to have any kind of this imagery because there is no positive point this subject offers. Even sexual content can disguise itself in sheep's clothing, like with Disney for example. There is so much liberal demonic ideology being pushed out into a lot of recent shows nowadays. Movies like Turning Red, for example, with the underlying tone of coming out who you feel like being, regardless of actual objective truth. Sexual themes and images are shaped in lots of ways in media besides lustful content itself. I can only say skip these scenes if it's a one-time thing, or just turn it off completely if the whole story is centered around this garbage. The only pass I can give it is when the movie or story has a plot regarding this message addressing its harmful effects when taken out of God's design. And I think The Chosen, for example, nailed it with this execution. When Mary Magdalene is experiencing a tormented past, and the only way to cope through that life is by engaging in prostitution activity just to get by, which obviously we know is wrong, and the show itself is saying it's wrong as well. The show doesn't go out of its way to visually show what kind of activity she is partaking in. All the show does is just hint the audience with a closed door, and we get everything we need to know about the state of mind she's in. And then at the end of the episode, Jesus breaks her free from all the demonic possession that has held a power over her up until that point and is transformed. It's super powerful, showing the dilemma and the evil that is happening on screen without explicitly showing the audience. Just like a classic hero story of a knight in shining armor battling the evil beast so he can rescue the captive. Let's talk about explicit language. I feel like the subject alone will be the most controversial, especially in the Christian world, since everyone has lots of views on the topic if Christians can swear. I feel like this subject alone will be the most controversial, especially in the Christian world, since everyone has lots of views on the topic if Christians can swear. And while I hold my own opinion that you shouldn't swear and keep your tongue clean, to have no foul word come out of your mouth, I think the topic of should Christians partake in media that has explicit language is an interesting discussion. The main reason is because, first of all, at this point of time we are living in, basically every movie that is not G-rated has at least one swear word. And some swear words are definitely worse than other ones, obviously. Not to mention the biggest one, which is taking the Lord's name in vain. Yes, it is basically in everything you see, not to mention everywhere you go in the real world. So what do? Do you turn off the TV and never turn it on again? Or do you just sit through it and then get used to it? My stance on this discussion is simply this. Your mind needs a filter to clean out all the unclean things you hear. Most mature people are good at doing this since they kind of have to, living in the real world where we hear over 1,000 cuss words a day. And I really don't think it's that realistic just to pick up the remote and watching a movie and skip one scene because of one piece of dialogue. Especially in the case of a new release where you haven't viewed it prior and all of a sudden a word is blurred out and then the show carries on. You can't catch stuff like that. And if somehow you're able to do that, then I respect those fast reflexes you have. But when it comes to everyone else, I say make the quick acknowledgement of what you're hearing isn't right, especially if you have kids watching with you. Then make it clear to them that those are not words to be spoken in the house. It just helps keep that acknowledgement that you are not only engaged with the material for your kids' sake, but it will also show them that you care for them and the words they speak. I also know that there's some third-party media sources to bleep out those cuss words, but you might have to find those resources yourself. Anyway, the whole language thing can be a slippery slope. And there's some people who have a really hard time controlling their tongue. And if a certain show is too much of a stumbling block that has those words, then maybe it's not the right time for those certain individuals to watch that certain program. I mean, if anything, you don't need just swear words in a show to give off bad influence. Look at the kids show Caillou, that little punk who's always disrespecting his parents with mean words and temper tantrums. That's only gonna fuel even more of that same behavior for its young audience. Before you know it, it will have a bunch of little kids disrespecting their parents in the exact same way regardless if there is bad words, quote unquote. So once again, the take-home message of all of this is be on guard. Be careful what you watch, and especially be careful for what your kids watch with this frame of an outlook. And to be clear, there should be a huge difference in how you monitor language in media compared to sexual content. People who don't understand the distinction just think R-rated means that they fall under the same category. I hate to burst your bubble, but these two topics are completely separate. Sexual content should be avoided at all times, since we are made to crave those images. But the world/movie industry corrupts these images and take them for their self-serving greed. Those images take a toll in someone's mind and can lead them astray, distorting and perverting the mind of what reality really is. I just wanted to make that point clear before I continue. One more element I want to talk about regarding this whole topic is time consumption. So let's say you've taken all my advice from my previous points I've made. You are now showing good quality media through the mindset of walking through an art gallery, or just rejecting something flat out from its bad messaging and bad portrayal of violence. You're watching media the right way that glorifies God. But how much is too much? I'm not referring to specifically the runtime of a movie per se. I'm saying how much time are you dedicating your life or your kid's life to watch movies, even if you're doing all the points I said before. And my answer to that is, do not get obsessed to the point where it becomes an addiction, to the point where that's all you can think about doing, to the point where you start neglecting responsibilities you have in the real world, to the point where the fake reality has become your new reality. That's when it becomes really harmful. This message is for everyone of all ages, not just kids. After all, what good media should do is reflect our own world and give us lessons we can apply ourselves from the stories we love, and then apply that in our own lives, just like a parable. Because we are called to be living in the here and now, the present, for God's purpose. Not to get lost in a fake reality that media can be an avenue for, but instead use media as a mechanism to understand reality rather than escape it. Sure, art museums have so many incredible pieces of artwork to take away and understand the meaning, but how about you go outside and look at the real art God has made in front of you? Go for a walk, go for a run, hang out with friends and experience the real painting that we get to be in every day. So hopefully those points made sense and maybe you got some good takeaways from what I had to say. And like I always said before, use discernment and use your best judgment with God's help. And with that being said, I will call it here. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. Like I said, I hope that this actually helped you and will give you some guidance of where to give your kids and yourself some knowledge in these areas that are kind of vague, especially when you're trying to navigate this yourself. Let me know if you want to see more essays like this, because I actually really do enjoy making them, even if they take a long time to make. And with that said, I will see you all next time.